Thank you very much for the invitation to present this paper. Actually, the invitation was a great motivation to finish the work on the paper. So now it's a round piece of work. Otherwise, we may have been running the regressions for the next couple of months. I learned that it's good to open the discussion with a good quote and a good joke. So this is the quote. As Patrick, I think, is now doing some work in Merced, so this is very close to Yosemite National Park. So Hetch Hetchy, before the dam, was similar to Yosemite. And then they built the dam, which was highly contested. And the architecture, the chief engineer, said that the technical problems of the dam were very simple, but the political ones made it so complex. So my today's talk is to show that sometimes the complexity of the project comes from political variables, not necessarily from the technical ones that can be solved by engineers in a piece of paper or using advanced software. So this is the joke. What is a PPP in my understanding? It's like making fried eggs with bacon. Well, the hen cooperates, but the pig is committed in the long term with sharing profits, investments, and risks. If there is no long-term commitment, therefore we have a simple procurement. Otherwise, we have sunk cost, natural monopolies, public interest that comes into play, all sort of non-relational contracting issues, informational asymmetries, double-sided hold-up, and we can extend the list to all the papers we know and come back to that leads to renegotiations, the longer the contracts are. In the literature, I hope I haven't missed many of the people here present. I see your paper is also there. There is a space which haven't been completed, and this is why we are trying to bridge. And this is from the political economy, the institutional framework into empirically testing what are the issues of relating to the private participation in infrastructure that are anchored in the institutional framework from an empirical point of view. We have a very simple model. I'm not as smart as Ronald, Eduardo, and Alex, so I will show a very simple toy model in where we have very basic assumptions are depicted here. We have a public agent and private investor that invest a certain amount of money. There is a predictable cash flow period that is a variable. It depends on the sector. There's a terminal value that is realized after that predictable period. And there are two discount rates. So one that is for the predictable period and then for the terminal value. In the terminal value period, the private sector only receives cash flows from the project, but the public sector can levy taxes and also can extract rents from the project. So even though the expected value of the terminal value may be the same, the standard deviation of that value is different, and that also drives why we may have two different discount rates. Just side note, the discount rate applied to long-term projects, public projects, is still an open question. The UK uses a single discount rate, but you can list as many economists, starting from Kenneth Arnold and Robin Lind, that say that you should use two different discount rates. And I'm working on this idea with Digen, and that maybe will be formalized in a paper somewhere soon. So after I will skip all the math. What we come with is a comparative statics where all these assumptions are internalized very simply, and we come to predictions. So the more efficient the private sector is, it's more probable that we'll have PPPs, which is totally natural. Also, it boils down to the productivity differential between the private and the public sector, to the number of years. I mean, this is the predictability of the cash flows, and it's sector dependent. A cash flow from a water company is more predictable than from a telecom, because the technologies arise quicker in technology sectors. And we have also a differential in the discount rate from the private and public sector. And this will also drive some implications, especially related to the terminal value, where all the political variables come into place. In the predictable period, even if there is high political risk, well, that risk, it's never going to happen in the next month. I mean, we are not going to expropriate, government is not going to expropriate a utility the next month after awarding. It will come after a certain period. So this is what we are trying to also model, that there is a predictable period where everything goes okay, and then all the political variables, the ones that we are trying to put under the carpet, that we don't want to discuss them. This is the bad things. Well, all those things are going to happen sometime in the future, in the what we call after the predictable period in the terminal value. So the predictions that we arise with are related to the rule of law, the quality of regulation, the freedom of corruption, from corruption, and the number of disputes. And these are because these are the variables that we have in our data set. So here it comes what I think is the major contribution of this paper. Maybe the results will be discussable, but the data set that I can share with is a compound of 4 sources of data. The most important data set is from the World Bank, and I have to mention also credit to my co-authors, Gonzalo, Gonzalo Raja, Fernanda Ruiz Núñez, who is not here, Jordan Smith, who worked for the World Bank. So they were thanks to them, this data was successfully compounded. So the major data comes from the World Bank, the PPIF data set that has private participation in infrastructure across, is a cross-country data set. We compound that with quality of governance standard database, which is assembled at the in Sweden, the Goethe University, not Goethe University, but in Sweden. Also with disputes at the country level, and as many economic variables as we could collect. And at the end, we have more than 2,500 observations from 80 countries, more than 100 variables for 30 years. Yeah, and depending on the specifications, the number of observations is going to be higher or lower if there are missing values. So the variables of interest for this study were the quality of government, and this is a mean of corruption, rule of law, and bureaucracy quality. Freedom from corruption is taken from the from Transparency International Corruption Perception Index. Then we have government effectiveness, and this measures the quality of public services. How competent are the civil servants, the government's commitment to policies. The rule of law includes the perceptions on incidence of crime. And also we have a variable for regulatory quality, which measures the incidence of market and friendly policies, like maybe in the extreme expropriation.